Hello world, it's Nostalgia Tash and you're listening to Nostalgia Tash Watches Disney Plus Films. Now, before we get started, I just want to acknowledge the vast discrepancies between the first, second, and now this being the third podcast's audio quality. I've basically been trial and erroring different rooms in my house in terms of how much sort of ambient sound there is, what I can do to control that in order to have a bit more of a soundproof recording space. I live right beside a major A road, so the constant hum of traffic is something that I'm trying to take into consideration when recording and editing this podcast. So please just bear with me while I work all that out. If you do have any tips, tricks, ideas, please let me know. And hopefully we can get some more consistency in the next coming episodes. So now that that's out of the way, we will get to our topic for the week, which is the first in our sports segment. So what I've noticed is that Disney live action films love coming under two categories, either animals, which there are a plethora of, or sports, which is where the rest of the plethora seems to go. So specifically this week, we're going to be looking at baseball as the sports theme of the week. Specifically within that, we're going to be looking at Rookie of the Year from 1993, The Rookie from 2002, and Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off, which doesn't sound like a baseball-related film, but trust me, there are baseball elements to it. So what I'm thinking for the flow of this episode is I'll give you a brief summary of each of the films. I will go over my notes, sort of things that I noticed, reactions to interesting bits in the film, cute, funny, all that good stuff. We'll go again to our IMDb facts. We had a little bit better luck with IMDb this time around than we did during the last episode. We didn't have to resort to Wikipedia this time. But again, there's still not as much for every single movie, but that's okay. What I ended up doing for some of the movies is I ended up taking information from IMDb, maybe not found specifically in the trivia section, but essentially drafting my own bits of trivia based off of the information found there. So they're not officially in the trivia page, but they still count because I say they count, and we'll just leave it at that. So the first film that we're going to be looking at today is Rookie of the Year. Essentially, the film is about a 12-year-old boy named Henry who injures himself by being clumsy while playing baseball. That, in turn, once his arm heals, leaves him with really tight tendons that cause him to be able to pitch baseballs at over, I think, like 100 miles per hour or something, which is so impressive that the Chicago Cubs draft him to be their pitcher for the season. And in and amongst all of that, while Henry's learning how to pitch for a Major League Baseball team, he's taken under the wing of the current pitcher for the Cubs, Chet Baker, who's kind of like that bad boy, rough and tumble, kind of like on his last legs, gruff, whatever. I don't know. It's very stereotypical kind of older person role that I find happens in a lot of films where they like mentor the young up-and-comer. So that's the main gist of the story. Hilarity ensues. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. Ups and downs, whatever. That's the crux of the film. So what I'll do is I'll go over some of the things that I thought were kind of interesting, kind of silly, and we'll go from there. So one of the things that I wasn't sure about, one of the questions I have, so basically one of the inciting incident for Henry breaking his arm and then developing these crazy pitching skills is he goes to his Little League game and he's convinced he's not going to like sit on the bench the whole time because I guess he's so bad that like coach never puts him in. But I feel like with Little League, isn't it that everybody should get a chance to play regardless of their skill? I've never played baseball. I only ever grew up playing soccer or football. But even then, like, I wasn't very good. But, like, everybody is supposed to play. Like, that's part of Little League. It's less about winning and more about, like, team building and camaraderie. It's basically like non-school related gym class. But apparently he never got put in except for this one time because the sneezy allergy guy was just too much for the little league coach. So they pulled him out, stuck Henry in. He tripped on a baseball, broke his arm. Everyone was like, oh, wow, look at you, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that they focus on a lot in the movie is sort of like the unknown origins of Henry's dad. So at first I thought it was like, you know how sometimes when a parent in cinematic universe passes away, they sort of have like dead parent aspirations, like, oh, they want to be as great or fantastical as this person. So that's what I thought was the situation. Turns out that's not the case. Dad is just not around. He was never around. You find out later on that he left Mary, who's Henry's mom, while she was pregnant with him. But that's all big hush hush up until like a certain point. So single mom Mary has this boyfriend, and you can tell that this movie was filmed in the 90s. He has the pinnacle of 90s pattern shirt on. I think he wears very aesthetically 90s pattern shirts. So this boyfriend, I guess, is like coming in too hot. They talk about how they've been going out for 3 weeks and he's already like buying her jewelry and like getting all up in her business and just like being way too lovey-dovey, a little OTT. But, you know, Mary likes him. Henry just kind of rolls her eyes. So what happens is once they find out that Henry has this amazing pitching ability, the boyfriend kind of goes from like unassuming OTT, like 5-stage clinger, to like super smarmy, businessy greaseball over the course of the film. He basically has zero interest in Henry until he has this magnificent pitching ability. And so he then, I feel like he almost just did it without almost consulting Mary, but he basically becomes Henry's manager. There's the son of the Chicago Cubs owner, and the son is going to be taking over the business after this year, and he's kind of like super smarmy business, money-oriented guy. And so he then chats up this boyfriend and is like, oh, if you get this kid to sign, I'll give you 10% of whatever he earns and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, smarmy boyfriend's eyes light up and he decides, yeah, cool, that's what we're going to do. And over the course of the film, he just gets more and more schmarmy and like greasy, and just like his whole demeanor changes. And then so while that's happening behind the scenes money-wise, Henry is now been drafted to play with the Cubs and is taken under the wing by Chet Baker, who is played by Gary Busey. And basically at the beginning, Chet kind of like wants nothing to do with Henry, but something happens. I can't remember. I think it's like he just, you know, he just works his little 12-year-old kid cute charm or something, and Chet takes a liking to him. He also starts to take a liking to Mary, Henry's mom, and so at one point there's like a big celebratory home game, so they're having a party and Chet and Mary are dancing, and it just cuts to like smarmy boyfriend and owner's son like chatting about how Chet's like trying to steal his woman. While that's happening, the owner's son is having a discussion with smarmy boyfriend about how the Yankees want to buy Henry, and how wouldn't it be amazing if Henry got signed to them, then you would get 10% of the signing, and then you could move the family to New York and be away from Chet, and wouldn't that be amazing? You just have to convince them to sign and blah, blah, blah. So that happens towards the end, I guess, end of the third portion of the movie is when all of this gets discussed. So while Henry's baseball career is taking off in one sort of frame of brain of the movie, in the other portion, it's about Henry trying to just be a 12-year-old boy and reconciling how now he has these fantastic pitching skills and what sort of his priorities are. So he has these two little friends that are with him from the very beginning, and their whole thing is that they're trying to build a boat. So every couple of days, every week, I'm not sure what the timeline is, they all get together and they work on this boat. And the one guy, the older one, I think his name might be Frankie or something, he just like zings out all the one-liners and stuff. After Henry's very first baseball game, they're all sitting there, and then the quote says, "Let's go back to our dull lives and search for meaning." I just thought was very philosophical for a 12-year-old to be saying. It doesn't really match his character, though. Later on, Henry shows up late to one boat building session, and this kid just like, it's like, "What, you think you're better than us now?" And then they like fight, but they kind of just like roll around on the ground, like silly little 12-year-old fight. But then by like the next frame, they're like best friends again. Because the boat's finished, they all go sailing on their boat, they like pick up some girls, and they're just like super loving life, and Henry realizes like, I would rather do this. So with Henry being a 12-year-old and his baseball career kind of coming to a head, there's this amazing scene where, so what's happening obviously is like, smarmy boyfriend gets mom to coercively sign them over to the Yankees. So he's all excited because they're going to move to New York together. And the stipulation was that the owner's son had to get rid of Chet Baker as well. Because, you know, even though they're leaving to New York, this boyfriend wants to ruin Chet's career anyway. So anyway, Henry gets back from having his great day at the beach on the boat with his homies, with his new little girlfriend. And then boyfriend is like, "You missed a photo shoot. I made you. You're amazing. We don't know who your dad is. He's some deadbeat so-and-so, and I'm amazing. Blah, blah, blah." And then mom hears all of this. Mary comes rushing down the stairs and is like, "Who the hell do you think you are? My kid will not be pushed around by you." And then of course he's like, "Oh, like I'm so sorry. Like I didn't think you could hear us." And it's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And so she basically yells at him to get out, and he's like, "You can't tell me what to do. I'm his manager." And then she goes, "He's my son," and she decks him in the face. And it's so good, because literally leading up into that point, when he starts having this argument with Henry and Mary's off screen, I'm like, oh, I hope Chet comes like at some point and decks him in the face. And then even better, Mary comes and does it and punches him out of their house and throws his man purse at him and is like, "Get the hell out of my life." And at the end of that scene, they're like, her and Henry are celebrating. They're like, "Whoa, oh my god, I can't believe you did this." And if you're not listening closely enough, there's this amazing moment where it's like the adrenaline has taken over her and she's super hyped about the whole situation, and she's like, "Oh my god, that felt so good. What a butthead he turned out to be. Maybe I should have killed him." And and I was like, that's just something, I don't know if you would get away with saying that in like a kid's movie nowadays, but I just thought it was really funny. So yes, the MVP, the feminist icon we didn't know we needed, Henry's mom, Mary, was amazing. You also find out, speaking of which, so when they were talking previously, when Henry had like data aspirations, like, "Oh yeah, maybe my dad was a pitcher, blah, blah, blah," all this kind of stuff, he finds out that it was actually his mom who was the awesome pitcher this whole time. Again, Mary being amazing. So he basically finds this out because at the last game of the World Series before they go on to the playoffs or whatever, I don't know the terms for baseball, whatever, Henry trips and falls again, and he does the same thing that he did last time when he broke his arm, but instead he didn't break his arm, he just lost his amazing throwing powers, literally in the middle of the game. So they had to do a couple innings where they used like silly kind of 12-year-old trickery type things. It happened in a few other games as well, where he was like basically being like a silly little 12-year-old and like taunting these grown-ass baseball playing adults. So this happens again in the final scene. And what they're doing is like, they did this one thing where they huddle up and they basically trick the other team's baseman by thinking that Henry has the ball, but in fact they passed it off to the first baseman and he was able to get the player out, which didn't seem like a legal baseball trick. But for the suspension of film and cinematic universes, I guess it's kind of like showing you like, oh yeah, like when this kid thinks like a 12-year-old, he's just as amazing as when he can throw 100 miles an hour like a pitcher. So then that happens, and then at the end, he's like, oh man, like I still gotta throw a pitch, like what do I do, blah blah blah. And he looks up at his mom, and I guess he has his old mitt the whole time, and he notices that there's like a tag over top of it, which I don't know how he didn't notice this until this point, but when he rips the tag off, it has Mary's name on it, so it was actually her pitcher's mitt, and she's the amazing pitcher, and so he uses her fancy, amazing, underhand alley-oop trick and gets the guy out, and they win, and it's amazing, and I just spoiled the movie for everyone. You should know by now that this movie podcast will have spoilers in it. I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's just how we're doing things now. But anyway, some of the, like, dumb moments, I guess. So when Henry first gets to the baseball pitch, or he gets to, like, the Cubs locker room and stuff, and he's, like, getting ready to change into his little Cubs uniform, and oh my god, it's so amazing. He, like, has this basically, like, self-conscious wiener moment, where he's sitting there, and all of the other men around him are changing, and he, like, looks down at their junk, presumably, and he, like, feels all self-conscious, so, because he's little, he literally climbs into his locker and gets changed. And I was like, you're 12, like, you don't need to be thinking or worrying about that kind of stuff. The other thing that I thought was a little bit silly, so the person who directed this movie, Daniel Stern, he actually has a role in the film, so he plays the pitching coach. I don't know if he's the pitching coach, just like the coach in general. But you can tell that he was kind of like just comedic relief. And so he basically is like constantly chewing on sunflower seeds, which is like the PC version of them all chewing tobacco. He's like obsessed with chewing on seeds, so he always kind of looks like he's mid-chew. And so he like mumble talks and stuff. And then there's moments where he like gets caught in like door frames and like caught behind doors, and he's just like, I don't know, I thought he was more annoying than comedic. Wasn't my cup of tea. I think maybe like if you were a little kid, you might find those sorts of bits really funny, and since maybe this was geared to be a kid's film at the time, maybe that would have been more hilarious, but I just found him kind of annoying. Oh yeah, there's another really funny moment. So of course, Henry's whole shtick, the reason he joined the Cubs is because he can pitch really well, but I guess everybody has to bat at some point. So they send this 12-year-old kid out to a professional Major League Baseball game to bat. And Mary, his mom, is watching on this little TV while she's at work. And she's surrounded by flowers. I'm assuming she's a florist, but they never kind of get into that. And she's getting so angry while he's pitching. Presumably so. It's almost like protective mama bear cub mode, where she's just like yelling at the pitchers who like almost hit her son with the ball and all this stuff. Oh, it was just good. Just watch the film for Mary. Oh yeah, another thing that I wasn't sure about, actually, I needed to fact check this, but I didn't. So if you know the answer to this, let me know. Henry shows up to practice, and I guess he's late. So the captain, the team captain, tells him that he's fined $500 for showing up late. And he does this whole, like, breaks the fourth wall where he's like, what? That's like 6 years allowance. But yeah, so I don't actually know. Do you get fined when you show up late for practice when you're in professional sports? Let me know if you know, because I don't know. Yeah, I guess the final thing to note, sorry, I feel like I jumped all over the place with that. So the final thing that I noticed was actually in the credits, because you know how I love to watch through to the end. And they actually thank... there's special thanks, there's a whole list, but the last one is the fans of Chicago who never gave up. I know very little about baseball, but I know that there's like this huge thing about how the Cubs don't win a lot. I think that happens with like most sports. There's like a few teams that everybody just like is in love with and really roots for, even though they're just, I don't know, like they just don't have very good luck. But yeah, so the fans of Chicago who never gave up got a special shout out in this film. So, the IMDb facts for this film are as follows. Henry's mom, while she's watching Henry bat for the first time on the TV, She gets really excited because he scores a run after being walked. And she jumps up in excitement and she smacks her head on the lamp hanging above her. And apparently that was real. So she looks visibly hurt when this happens. And apparently she actually mutters, "Oh shit," which they dub over. So I think they just like mute over it so you can't actually hear it. So I love when things like that actually make it into the final film. If you want to go back over, I think it says at 57:49, you can lip read her saying, "Oh shit," after she smacks her head. Another fun fact about this film, John Candy was actually the radio broadcaster for the film. So he's the radio broadcaster at the Cubs Stadium during the course of the film, and he's uncredited. So he wasn't originally cast in the movie. So this was an uncredited role of his, and I actually found him and his humor a lot more funny than Daniel Stern's character that he was playing. Speaking of Daniel Stern, this is actually the only film he's ever directed. That name might sound familiar. He's mostly famous because he was one of the bad guys in the Home Alone series. So additionally, following the film's release, so Thomas Ian Nicholas is the boy who plays Henry. So he actually threw out the first pitch at multiple Cubs games. And then he also sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" during the customary 7th inning stretch at Wrigley Field. And he also, in 2015, where the Cubs played the Mets like they did in the movie, Nicholas actually attended in his jersey. So Henry's name in the film is Henry Rowengartner, number 1. So he actually wears a custom Rowengartner number 1 jersey to the game. But unfortunately, the Cubs lost that game. So another fun fact is when Henry goes to the Wrigley Field as a pitcher, he goes to the player's entrance, and when he knocks on the door, there's an old man who pokes his head through a hole in the door, and at first he doesn't let Henry in. Once Henry reveals who he is, the old man says, "Well, that's a horse of a different color," which is the same thing that happens in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy and the gang get to Oz. It feels very random to have a Wizard of Oz reference in the film, but they do, and that's what it is. Additionally, Gary Busey, who plays Chet Baker, is actually clean shaven during the production, and so the mustache he wears for his character is actually fake, which maybe if you pay attention to like prosthetics and costume design and makeup design, you might notice things like that. I definitely wasn't paying close enough attention. In 1993, when the film came out, Rowengartner would have been making $109,000 minimum as a rookie baseball player, allegedly, which as of 2019, the equivalent of that would be $193,537. I guess he would be making a lot more as a rookie now than he would back in the day, but that would have been his rookie baseball salary. Another Chet, was I calling him Chet Baker? Apparently it's been Chet Steadman this whole time. Anyway, so Chet Steadman is based on the MLB player Roger Clemens, whose nickname is Rocket, and that was the nickname that Chet Steadman had in the film, presumably when he was at the height of his pitching career. And like I mentioned previously, at one point, Henry's coach tells him that he's fined $500 for showing up to practice late, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, like that's 6 years of my allowance." Basically, someone did the math and worked out that Henry's allowance is £1.60 per week. Another fact about Thomas Ian Nichols, so he plays a baseball player in this film, and then a few years later he also goes on to play a baseball player again in the film A Kid in King Arthur's Court. Non-baseball related role, you might know him as Kevin Myers from the American Pie series, which came out 6 years after this one. A lot can happen between 12 and 18, apparently. Last two IMDb facts. Henry tosses back the opposing home run. That's when everybody finds out that he has this wicked pitching power. Apparently, it is a Wrigley Field tradition for Cubs fans to toss back home runs hit by the opposing team. And the underhand lob that is the final finishing move that Henry uses to strike out the Mets player is given away at the beginning of the movie when Henry's mom throws him sunscreen. So you see this Mary Rowengartner approved pitching technique when they're heading off to their first away game and she chucks him some sunscreen in the airport. So yeah, more spoilers. So that was it for that movie. We are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to dive into 2002's The Rookie. And we're back. So the next film on our list is The Rookie from 2002. So this film is actually a biopic about Jim Morris, who was I guess he was one of the oldest pitchers in the MLB. So essentially when he was younger, he tried out for the rookie draft picks. He got injured, moved back to his hometown, thought his life was over, and then he sort of gets this redemption second shot at the big leagues, which he takes after he challenges the high school baseball team that he coaches to win their season. If they win their end of season game, then he will then go and try out for the big leagues. So the film is essentially divided into two sections. It's basically talking about Jim's journey and passion in the town that he grew up in Texas, as a science teacher and baseball coach, and the town, and getting sort of an idea about the characters and the people that his family and his neighbors are. And then the second portion of the film is him basically making it in the, I don't know what the term is before you make it to the big leagues, the rookie traveling baseball stage, and then if they're good enough, then they get drafted to move up to the big leagues. I don't specifically know what that term is called, but basically the second half of the movie is exploring him as a traveling baseball player and eventually getting into the big leagues, and sort of reconciling that he's traveling away from his wife and their 3 kids and that sort of situation. So, the first thing you notice, I think, right from the get-go with this film is that it's meant to be one of those very aspirational American dreams. You can achieve anything you set your mind to with just a little bit of faith and luck. Because this whole film sort of starts out giving a history of the town. So this particular town in Texas was this oil rig town, and then about baseball and those juxtapositions to that. And then it talks about Jim Morris, Jimmy, as a young boy, and he's an army brat, so his dad's moved around all over the place with their family, and all he's really cared about is baseball, and kind of has always had a chip in his shoulder that his dad never supported his dream of baseball. They reference Saint Rita, which is the patron saint of the impossible. So they kind of draw parallels between this particular person striking oil in this town of Texas and Jim Moore sort of striking big on his dreams. Basically, yeah, in junior college he got drafted. Now he's in his 30s. He has a wife and kids, and he has a shoulder injury. And he still lives in the town that he grew up in, the last kind of town that his dad was stationed in. And now is a science teacher and a baseball coach. They had this moment, because I guess they were talking about sort of the comparison between the football program and the baseball program at the high school, and how I guess the football program, which you never see, has this amazing field and all this equipment, and the baseball team sort of is very underfunded. The grass that they have on their field isn't growing. So I thought maybe this was going to be some sort of deep metaphor, but it wasn't. It was more just a chance to showcase the townspeople, just how quirky they are, because basically the baseball field grass isn't growing because in the evening deer are coming onto the field and eating all the grass seed. So the townspeople, specifically there's these 3 guys who've watched Jimmy grow up and stuff. One of them's a barber, but the 3 of them take all of the hair from the barber shop and they spread it around the field, because apparently if deers smell humans, then they'll leave the area alone. So they did that one night, and then grass started growing, and it was this big amazing thing. So what I thought was going to be this huge metaphorical event was just a chance to showcase the sort of quirky ingenuity and problem-solving techniques of the town's residents. I don't actually know if this is a thing that works. They don't specify or they don't clarify in any trivia whether or not deer smelling human hair is a pest control tactic. If you know, let me know. But yeah, so basically the start of this is Jimmy's this baseball coach, and in his spare time he goes into this big open field and he practices his pitching. And I guess he made a promise to his wife that he wouldn't push himself because his shoulder's really injured. He's had surgery for it, all of that. she doesn't want him hurting himself again. And so he basically goes out and practices by himself. He actually brings his little boy with him. So his little boy Hunter, played by Angus T. Jones, loves baseball as much as he does. And so he always comes and helps him at his baseball practices. And then when they're driving home, he's usually fallen asleep in the back of the pickup truck. And then Jimmy goes and like practices his pitching and things like that. So there's this moment between one of the students, who I guess is the umpire. Is that the one who stands behind the batter? Anyway, so the guy who catches the ball behind the batter. So he was like, come on, coach, like, you can throw real good. Like, why don't you practice, like, proper throwing with me? And he's like, oh, no, I promised I can't do that anymore, whatever. And they're like, come on, man, like, do this. So he does, and his pitch is really hard. And so everybody's like, come on, like, you need to chase your dreams, all this kind of stuff. So there's this one scene where he drives past a speedometer, and he's like, oh, I wonder, like, how big my pitch is. Because he's like, in order to make it into the major leagues, you have to be throwing like over 80, and he's not sure if he still has it in him, but he's gonna test. So he tries to throw the ball at this speedometer, and it shows him 76. So he's like, oh man, like, that's not good enough. Like, my dreams die, essentially. He's like, I'm content, but he's not really content with the fact that I'm not going to play Major League again. But then through the magic of cinema, he walks away from the speedometer, and there was like a glitch, and it actually read 96 instead of 76. So he actually still has what it takes, but he doesn't know it yet. So there's a lot of that where it's kind of like alluding to he has what it takes, even though he doesn't realize it yet, happening in like the first part of the movie. So like I said, there's this big thing where the high school baseball kids are like, coach, we will try our best and achieve our dreams as long as you try your best and achieve your dreams. So they make this promise, and then his team starts winning. And so at the end, it was really cute. So they win their thing, they do what they needed to do, and they actually signed their names on the game-winning ball to give to their coach. And then they do this like big inspirational thing where they each shake his hand and they go, it's your turn, coach. And every single person does it. And it seems a little bit OTT for me. I'm like, okay, we get it. But I guess it's kind of similar to, like, again, referring to when I used to play soccer. After each game, you would line up and the other team would line up, and you parallel walk across each other and like shake hands and say good game, or like high five and say like good game. So I think this whole like your turn, coach was sort of like this cheeky good game sort of sentiment crossover thing. So yeah, I got it. I thought it was super cheesy, but it made sense. Now we're transitioning into the second half of the film, where now Jimmy's got to go and try and prove himself. So he shows up to the scouting tryouts with his 3 kids because he doesn't want to tell his wife what he's doing. And he gets to pitch, and they build it up because, of course, all of the speed guns are pointing at him. But the audience isn't allowed to see how he's doing because there's like this whole suspension of like, oh, is he good enough? Is he not good enough? Turns out he's been pitching at 98 miles per hour the whole run. He then does it again. There's like a whole scene where then they trial him again, but it's like in the rain for like more dramatic effect, and he's still pitching just as good. There's a moment, obviously, eventually it comes to a head where he has to tell his wife, and you kind of don't know if like she's going to be pissed or if she's going to be unsupportive. And she is kind of at first, because I think she's scared and she's worried because she had to watch him get injured back when he originally got drafted. And so she's very much wanting, you need to be here for our kids and you need to settle down. Basically like telling him like, you need to give up your dreams. These can be your new dreams, and you need to like settle and like put this silly fantasy aside. And so I was like, uh-oh, we don't like her anymore. But then she goes to tuck her son in bed, little Hunter, and sees just his sweet cherub little face. And then she realizes that what sort of a family they would be if they told their kids that it was okay to give up on their dreams. Especially because Hunter loves baseball as much as his dad does. And he's so proud of his dad for going after what he wants. So the mom thought that she would be hella hypocritical if she tried to stop her husband for going after his dreams. but like he's still not sure because he knows that it's a bit, I guess it's like a big pay decrease because as well he had a really secure job at the high school. He was looking at going to like a more prestigious high school, so he was going to get an even more secure paycheck that way. So he was like, oh, but like, do I really need to? Like, what about you? Oh my goodness. And the wife basically goes, I'm a Texas woman, which means I don't need the help of any man to keep things running. So she basically is like, screw off, go live your dreams. I can handle this because I'm a Texas woman. Leading up to all of this, and like as he's touring and traveling, his team thinks that he's basically just like a gimmick and he's getting all of the limelight and the attention. So his team's all like talking crap about him behind his back. So he's kind of like really not sure if he wants to tough it out because he doesn't think he's good enough and he misses his kids. But then him and Brooks, who is one of the other players on the team, get called up to the major leagues. And they get called up to the Devil Rays, and they're currently playing an away game in Jimmy's hometown. So Jimmy's first game as a Major League Baseball player gets to be in Texas. So naturally, the whole town shows up for Jimmy and his first Major League game. Even his dad shows up, and it's like this really sweet moment where he gives his dad the ball from his very first MLB game. And even I got suckered in to this feel-good story. As much as I shit on, these cheesy, aspirational, lovey-dovey, you can do anything, achievement-y biopics, it was a good film. I very much enjoyed it. The kids actually were really hilarious. So, of course, every time Jimmy does something where he's like, don't tell your mom. There's a few moments. So the first one is when he's pitching with the high school student. And so Hunter looks at him and goes, I don't get to tell mom about this, do I? And then after he tries out for all the scouts and stuff, they come home and his daughter goes, Daddy told me to come give you pizza and not say anything else. Because they brought pizza home and the mom was at home waiting, even though she heard on the messaging machine what was going on. But yeah, so that was really cute. And then when Hunter finds out that his dad is going to be Major League Baseball player, there's this super cute moment. Basically, they're just having like a stereotypical child conversation. Like, this is the kind of conversation that I feel like I would have with my nephew. So Hunter's talking to his dad. Hunter's like, who are you going to play for? And he's like, oh, I'm playing on the Devil Rays. He goes, well, what's a Devil Ray? He goes, I don't know, it's a fish. So he goes, well, what color is it? Can you eat it? And he's just asking like really stereotypical child questions, and it just made me smile because I can picture that basically being any kid anywhere, and that just made me really happy. So the last note that I will say is that I was anticipating, because normally when you watch a biopic, I really like at the end when they do the credits and they show the like comparison side by side with the real life inspiration for the film and the actors. So they didn't do that with this one. And I think it's because they put no effort in trying to make Dennis Quaid look like the real Jim Morris. Like, I was Googling later because I wanted to know, like, who is this person? Jim Morris has a mustache, and they didn't even try to put a mustache on Dennis Quaid. Like, they didn't even go as far to be like, here's elements of this person. So I think maybe that's why they did it. I don't know if maybe that was just something that biopics started doing later on. But I also think that maybe they didn't do it because they literally put no effort into trying to create real life depictions of these people via like costume and makeup and things like that. So now on to our IMDb segment. I will say a bit of a trigger warning. I am going to be talking about suicide. So just a quick warning that we're going to be talking just very briefly about that topic. So anyway, on to IMDb facts. In the film, Jim Morris teaches at Big Lake High School. Big Lake is the town that Jim Morris grows up in. He actually in real life teaches at Reagan County High School. But I guess to just drive home the point that they are in Big Lake, it made sense maybe to make it just Big Lake High School. Apparently, A-Rod, so Alex Rodriguez, see, I know, the only reason I know who he is because he dates Jennifer Lopez. Anyway, Alex Rodriguez appeared as a member of the Texas Rangers in the film, but in 1999 he was actually a member of the Seattle Mariners. Maybe they put him in, maybe he was a Texas Ranger at the point of filming, Because it's like they're not going to be like, hey, I know you're not on this team anymore, but can you like wear these colors just for this film? But anyway, so he makes a cameo. In the film, when Jimmy's called up to the majors, he's called up with his teammate Brooks. But in real life, Steve Cox was the player that was called up with him. The character in the film is a fictional character. In real life, there were 10 players on the team. So this is the high school baseball team. So that's shown in the movie. So the 4 talking owls, they're basically the only 4 that had lines. They're from LA, so they're known actors. And then the other 6 came from Texas, from Austin. So I guess that obviously the surrounding area that they're filming in. They actually held a camp and 800 kids came out and the producers got to pick from them. So I assume they probably had auditions for the speaking roles in LA, and then for like the background team kids, they did like a big open call out. So Jay Hernandez, Rick Gonzalez, and Chad Lindbergh still have prosperous acting careers. Jay Hernandez, I actually was not obsessed with, but I like super fancied after watching him in a film. I think it was the film he filmed just before this one or just after this one called Crazy Beautiful with Kirsten Dunst. Super obsessed with that film when I was younger. Anyway, but yeah, so all 3 of them still have really prosperous acting careers. The 4th is Angelo Sparisi. So he actually quit acting in 2006 to become a rock band tour manager. And then at the age of 32, in 2007, he died from undisclosed causes. But it was later confirmed actually by Chad Lindbergh that it was a suicide. I think it was like 11 years after Angelo Sparisi passed away. Chad Lindbergh posted like a tribute to him, I think on Twitter, just saying how many years since his best friend passed away and about mental health and how that matters and to reach out. I think one of the things that I'm looking at, obviously not as sad as this, is when you watch a lot of films, I think especially these ones, there's going to be a lot of like child actors in them. So I'm very interested to see who is either still acting, what they've been up to. And it does seem that there are 1 or 2 in every project that really kind of ended up in some dark places. And I think that kind of rings true for maybe just like Hollywood in a nutshell, but I think especially with young kids and like child actors when they're wanting to be part of this world. It's a big world of like rejection and constantly being put under pressure and trying to appease all these different people. And I think the mental health implications are only just becoming more apparent and becoming more brought to light in like the few years that just mental health in general is being talked about more broadly. But yeah, I'm anticipating that there's going to be a lot more dark history associated with some of these young actors. But it is really cool to see the ones that are still being prosperous and are still very successful, and the ones that maybe aren't working anymore but are still leading like happy, healthy lives. So that's not to say that this is the sort of script for all child actors, but it is something that is, I think, worth paying attention to and worth mentioning as we go through these films together. So the next fact is that August T. Jones, who plays Hunter, hasn't really done any acting since 2016. Another person who got really famous at a really young age. He's most well known for 2.5 Men. And as far as I know, he's come out as no longer supporting that show for just what he deems as like inappropriate humor and not ideal or not a good show anymore. So that's another person who, whether or not for positive or for negative reasons, has left the acting space, and somebody who was, again, quite prosperous as a young actor. More fun in the cinematic universe role, the scene with the radar never actually happened, and that scene actually was then copied in an ESPN commercial with Bobby Valentine taking the part of Jim Morris. But that actual scene in the film wasn't something that Jim Morris himself did. Another fact more about discrepancies within the real life Jim Morris and the biopic Jim Morris is that he was actually 35 when he was signed to the Devil Rays, which seems like it's amazing what ages your careers, like the career trajectory and the career timelines for different things are. it seems like the window of active career time and prosperity is so low, whereas like 35 is not old. Like that's quite a young age, but I guess in terms of pitchers, that's quite old. Anyway, so yes, Jim Morris was 35. Dennis Quaid, when the film was shot in 2001, was actually 47. So he was even older than the character that he was playing was. And if I might put my 2 cents in, Dennis Quaid looks better than ever. I'm sure he still looks fine, actually. I should Google a picture of him. It was funny because I was trying to think, because I'm pretty sure I've seen this movie in theaters when I was little, and I don't know why, because my family is not sport related at all. The only thing I can think about is there were kind of 2 main reasons that we would go to the cinema, and that's when it was summer and it was really hot. We didn't have any air conditioning, so we would pick places, like establishments that had air conditioning, so that would either be the mall or the cinema. And as well, my mom and I guess me, the whole family basically, would get like cravings for movie style popcorn. And so like we would go OTT with our movie popcorn. And so every once in a while we would just, like my mom would be like, I'm craving movie popcorn, let's just find a movie to go watch so we can eat popcorn. And so those are the only 2 reasons, besides this third one, that we think Dennis Quaid is an attractive human being. So it might have been that we went to this movie for one of these 3 reasons. Because I literally can't think of actually going for the film itself for me to then go out of my way to see this film as a child. So yes, I think the potential third reason that we might have seen this film is just for Dennis Quaid. Because even at 47, I think I knew as a child that he was a very attractive man. Anyways, last 2 bits of trivia. So the game that Jim Morris makes his major league debut was filmed on July 27th, 2001, and was an actual game between the Tampa Bay Rays and Texas Rangers. Jim Morris did not pitch in 2001. Because I did think that was quite, I guess, remarkable. Like, that was very cinematic. Because I would assume that if you get drafted to step up, you're practicing with the team, you're doing a lot more. Like, you're not out there pitching your very first game. That would seem very rare to me, that literally as soon as you get drafted, you've been put in. And the last thing, which if you want to watch this film and go in and look for yourself, apparently there are 2 cameos of the real Jim Morris. So the first one is he's an umpire in the Orlando games, and one he's with his wife Lori as spectators during the high school baseball team, the Owls, district championship game. I like that. I feel like that usually happens with a lot of biopics, is usually they'll hide the real person that the biopic is inspired by in the film. So that is it for this film. So what we're going to do is take one last break, and then we will dive into the wonderful world of our first Disney Channel original movie of the series, Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. And we're back. The final film that we will be talking about today is Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off from 2003. This is the first Disney Channel original movie that we will be talking about. So I love Disney Channel original movies. They actually, weirdly enough, remind me of my dad, because on the weekends, this is full disclosure, this is as adults or as like teenagers and my dad. As a teenager, me and my dad, on Saturday mornings on the Family Channel, they would do a Magical World of Disney segment, and at noon on Saturday, they would always play a Disney Channel original movie. And me and my dad just got into the habit of sitting down to watch these together. It was so funny because my mom would come down and be like, oh, it's time for your cheesy Disney film. I think my dad has watched the most films out of anybody in my family, because he will literally just sit down and watch anything. I feel like I just outed him as like a secret Disney nerd, but that's okay. Anyway, so yes, Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off is about a boy named Eddie who is torn between his love of baseball and his love of cooking. So I feel like this is the precursor to Troy having his existential crisis in High School Musical between basketball and musical theater. I feel like Eddie walked so Troy could run. So basically, Eddie is the star player of this little league team. His dad is the coach, and the team puts a lot of pressure on him. So the team, his dad, his best friends that are on the team basically tout him as like the best. He's the one who carries the team, he's the best player, all this kind of stuff. And it's not until there's like an inciting incident where basically Eddie has this moment where he's flipping through the TV and he stumbles across Bobby Flay and he just gets like totally enraptured. It's almost like he develops like this insta crush on him. Like, you know, the first time you see somebody and you're like, that's the most attractive person I've ever seen in my life. That's the look that Eddie gives Bobby Flay when he sees him on the TV. Whether or not it's because he's cooking, whether or not he's attracted to Bobby Flay, we don't know. This is Disney, early 2000s. So basically this is what happens. Eddie then decides that he wants to experiment with cooking. Eddie and his two best friends, DB and Francisco, end up back at Eddie's house following one of their Little League games. And Mom is there prepping all the food for, I don't know if it's like lunch, dinner, whatever, doesn't matter. So she's prepping and she cuts her finger. And so her dad needs to take her to the hospital. The brothers go too. So Eddie has two older brothers that essentially don't serve any function in the film except to like make fun of him a couple times. But anyway, so all four of them have to go to the hospital. And so Eddie is left with his two friends and they're meant to put away all the groceries. So Eddie's like, what would happen if we just like cooked with food instead of put the food away? And then DB and Francisco were like, what? What do you mean cook food? We don't do that. And they have a grand old time that sort of sparks Eddie's love or his wanting to explore cooking a bit more. So then it cuts to, I guess they're starting high school for the first time and they are signing up for their electives. And they basically want like a bird course. So they want a course that's really easy. So I guess Eddie's useless brothers have said that like computer science is the best course. You basically get, you know, graded for playing video games. It's amazing. So they go to sign up and I don't remember signing up for electives this way in high school. And this is a very inefficient way to do it. They basically have a sign-up wall that I only ever see happen in movies when you're signing up to like join a club. So they have all of the classes and you have to manually sign up for them on a bulletin board. So basically all of the students, and I guess, I don't know if they're in grade 9 or if they're in grade 7, I'm not sure if this is middle school or high school, they rush to the board and they have to make sure that the three of them get into computer science. And then Eddie notices that there's also a home economics class. Home economics is code for cooking. So Eddie's then having this like play-by-play where he's like, oh, do we sign up for computer science or home ec? So he basically like tricks his friends and makes it seem like he accidentally grabbed the wrong clipboard. And so he thinks that he thinks that they're signing up for computer science when they actually sign up for home economics instead. So they're like grumpy about it. And Eddie has to pretend to be grumpy about it, but he's secretly very excited. And also while this is happening, you have another player on the baseball team, Hannah, who is also lying about kind of who she wants to be as well. Her mom is convinced that she is going to be a cheerleader and is actually a cheerleader for the baseball team instead of an actual baseball player. So she basically is lying to her mom about that. And once Eddie gets himself more involved into like the culinary world, Hannah becomes a really big ally for him because she understands what it's like to have to sort of fake who you want to be. So after they've signed up for classes, you cut to and you meet the sort of antithesis of everything that DB and Francisco think that home ec is going to be like, what cooking is like, in the form of Bridget. So Bridget, I assume, takes home ec every year. She's like super OTT about stuff. It turns out, because she has a very distinct accent, and I was trying to figure out and place where that's from. It's actually New Zealand. The movie was actually filmed in New Zealand, so that makes sense as to why she has a New Zealand accent, and she is one of many of the extras, or many of the characters in the film who are actually from New Zealand as well. So, anyways, so she's super over the top, and then the home ec teacher talks about this $1 million cook-off, that you have to submit an original recipe, and then if your recipe gets chosen, you get to compete against a bunch of other high school chefs to get scholarship money towards a culinary school of your choice. So, of course, Bridget's like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. I love this. I've been preparing for this my whole life. And then Eddie's like, ooh, that's interesting. That's kind of cool. Like, I want to maybe secretly do this too. So, while this is happening, Eddie, again, is trying to, like, conceal the fact that he actually wants to cook. And his dad is, like, super sexist. All the sexism about, like, cooking stereotypes and things like that. So, after Eddie cooks dinner for the first time, the brothers and the dad are like, oh, like, are you actually Edwina? Like, you're actually a little girl who likes cooking? And the dad's all like, yeah, son, it's not like you're gonna change your baseball mitt in for an oven mitt anytime soon. Hardy har har har. It was super, super outdated. I don't know if anybody thinks that way anymore. I haven't seen or heard, like, a sexist, like, make me a sandwich joke in a really long time. But I do definitely remember growing up, and any boy who showed interest in, like, baking or cooking was seen as, like, a girl, or everyone thought that they were gay. So that like, the time frame of this film being made is definitely in line with what the cultural zeitgeist was for me growing up. Obviously, knowing that that's not appropriate now, it was never appropriate, but I appreciate that now these are the kinds of things that aren't being made, and I don't think that they would rely so heavily on these stereotypes if a movie like this was made now. So, while this is happening, the other people who are kind of, like, looking down on cooking and stuff is DB mostly. So DB, which I think secretly stands for douchebag, because that's what he has been for the majority of this film. So DB is always like, Eddie, like, cooking is dumb, you don't actually like this class. Francisco, like, is on DB's team, but, like, is a bit more sympathetic towards Eddie. One of the things that happens is Eddie's trying to get information from Bridget, like, actual legitimate cooking information from Bridget. And DB comes over and is like, what are you doing talking to the weird girl? And Eddie's like, don't worry about it, and distracts him by starting a giant food fight. And this is the first food fight of two that happen as a way to, like, basically this is a happy food fight, and then there's, like, a not so happy food fight that both happen between Eddie and DB. So this first food fight, Bridget has this quip where she goes, I bet Martha Stewart never had to put up with this, as she's, like, crawling around on the ground trying to avoid getting hit by food. I feel like Martha Stewart is still, like, the cornerstone when it comes to, like, kind of home cooking, home ec things. I think now she has a bit more of, like, a gangsta cred to her now that she's, like, BFFs with Snoop Dogg and stuff. But I don't think at the time of this film that was the case, so she was a bit more of a wholesome Susie Homemaker situation. But anyway, I thought that was lame but cute. While they're cleaning up, they come across this giant bowl of, like, purple goo, and Francisco just starts eating it, just as, like, a dare, and it ends up being really good. And so then Eddie has to spend a bunch of cutscenes compiling together the ingredients of this, because that's what he wants to submit for the cook-off as his original recipe. But because usually if you see a giant bucket full of random junk in the middle of cleaning up something, I would assume that it would be full of, like, cleaning products and, like, soap and residue and all that. Like, it would be like a mop bucket. But this, like, giant bowl, they were just like, oh yeah, there was a food fight, so this, like, this bowl got this perfect random assortment of food into it, and that makes it totally edible. Suspension of disbelief. It's a cheesy Disney film, it's fine. But I just thought that for it to exist and be found during the cleanup process made me assume that, like, there would be cleaning products in it. But regardless, Eddie then perfects his recipe, puts it in a jar, he puts it down, he's at baseball practice, and he puts it down, and then one of the kids just, like, starts shovel eating it, and it's like, who touches somebody else's food jar? When you are playing team sports and you're sitting, you don't just, like, drink out of someone else's water bottle without their permission. You don't, like, see their snacks in their bag and go, I'm gonna just eat their snacks. Like, unless you're best friends and you're, like, playing a prank on them and stuff. But I just thought it was completely out of character for just like some random bench warming kid to be like, there's a jar of purple stuff, let me just start eating it. That was super cheesy and a little bit forced. So of course, they see the goo, and DB's like, is that goo that we ate? Like, what the hell, man? And then Hannah, being awesome, becomes Eddie's secret keeper and lies, and it goes, oh no, that's like my thing that my mom made. Which DB obviously isn't very smart. He goes, oh yeah, okay, that checks out. Not drawing parallels between any of it, but that's fine. Again, Dad is sexist, not only with like Eddie and his love of cooking, but just in like all sorts of kind of stereotypes. I guess their team is going to go up against the Eagles, which is like the best team in Little League. And the dad, he's talking to like the other co-coach of the team and is like, do you know like what the Eagles coach does as a career? He's a nurse. Isn't that lame? And I think the other coach just kind of like rolls his eyes at him. But he's so doubling down on, this is what it means to be a man in baseball and blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of that throughout this whole film. And it just shows like how much that's not the case now. Mom then finds out what Eddie's trying to do and she's on board, but of course she knows that Dad thinks that Eddie's going to become this big baseball player and baseball is his life, and how dare he have other interests and hobbies and be distracted by other things he might enjoy. So they still keep it a secret from him. One thing that I thought was really weird though, in terms of keeping secrets and stuff. So, so Hannah, she has to pretend to be a cheerleader with her mom. And this lie goes on for quite a long time. And I would think, especially in like middle school, maybe high school, you don't show up for all of your kids' games and stuff. But I would have assumed that at least at some point when your kid is first starting to do a thing, you would go there to support them. And so it was really weird that it wasn't until like one of the last games, I think it was like the last game before they go to face the Eagles, where Hannah's mom shows up, and it's only because she forgot her pom-poms at home. And so then Hannah has to be like, Mom, I love baseball, and just deal with it. The mom is just kind of like, yeah, no, it's fine. Like, I'll support you regardless of what you want to do. I don't care if you're a cheerleader or a baseball player or, a nose picker. Like, you do whatever you want. And when that happens, like, Eddie's dad sees that. This is, like, towards the end of the film. And basically, Hannah's interaction with her mom teaches him, like, hey, maybe you should support your kids regardless of what their interests are, even if they don't align up with yours. So, but yeah, I thought it was really stupid that it took that long for the mom to be like, hey, I'm at your game, but you're not doing what I think you're doing. Another thing that I thought was like a bit too much, DB is so angry at Eddie for liking cooking. Like, it just, again, I don't know if he's just like so stuck in his toxic masculinity that he just like can't handle it. Because I don't know, I'm trying to think back like when you're younger and you have like a thing that you have in common with your friend, and then your friend starts to do something else. Like, do you feel like they're distancing themselves from you? Because it's not like he doesn't play baseball still. He just plays baseball and likes this other thing. And DB's like, but it's weird, man. Cooking in you is like weird. I don't understand. And like, I don't understand why you're being so upset about this. And I think as well too, like, because he does this, and then his dad also, when he finds out about the fact that like Eddie's been cooking and submitted this recipe to this cook-off, and he's like, oh, no one tells me anything, meh, meh, meh. But he's like super passive aggressive about it, and he's like, oh, but like the team needs you and we need you and blah blah blah. And it's like, it's not Eddie's fault that the rest of the team sucks. Like, he shouldn't be responsible for having to carry the whole team. And so if the dad really cared about his baseball team, he would spend time upskilling and teaching the other players and not just relying on his son and putting way too much pressure on him to like carry the team. Before Dad finds out, Eddie's like dividing his time between cook-off prep and baseball, and then of course it all comes to a head. But there's this moment where they're prepping, and I think they're prepping like chicken or something. They basically are taking all the insides out. And this was a huge oversight from the film department. But they have like a bin that they chuck all the guts in. And if you notice, the bin has no bag in it. Who chucks meat innards in a bagless bin. That's just like, I don't want to be responsible for cleaning that up. I would not want to be the janitor working at that school. That's for sure. But yeah, that made me really angry. I don't know. When I saw that, I was like, what do you mean there's no bag in this bin and you're just chucking raw meat in there? So again, all this prep leads up to DB and Eddie having another fight, which leads into another big ol' food fight. And then DB and him have to go back and clean again. Francisco has these moments where every time there's a food fight, he goes, this is the best food fight ever. And then there's no one, no man, I know I said it last time, but like, this is the best food fight ever. And then of course they're like, Francisco, shut up, like we were having a falling out in our friendship over here. So then Eddie feels even more conflicted because his best friends hate him now because he likes to cook, which is dumb. So he basically quits on the home ec teacher and Bridget and was like, whatever, I'm gonna go back to what I'm supposed to do. Not what he wants to do, what he's supposed to do, because he feels like everyone expects him just to be Mr. Baseball. And he like has this big kind of explosion about how everybody is mad at him and doesn't like him because he loves to cook. And then Bridget has this moment where she's like, do you think that's why everyone makes fun of me? Because I love to cook. And without missing a beat, the teacher's like, no, there's plenty of other reasons. Because it's basically established that she's like a super pain in the butt, this particular character. And you've met them. There is one in probably every high school class you've ever been in, or like every school you've ever been in, where you have that, like, to be fair, I might have been that person in school. The one who's like constantly asking questions and constantly being like, you need to check this, and you need to do this, and I'm perfect, and I need this, and I need that. I don't think I was that bad. But I did raise my hand a lot and answer questions all the time when I probably should have just kept my mouth shut more often than not. So, from an annoying girl to a super awesome girl, there seems to be a thread in all three of these movies where there are some bad-ass women in the film. So in this one, it is our girl Kimberly, who is one of the players on Eddie's Little League team, and she gets real tired of Coach's sexism, and she has this big monologue where she stands up for herself and all the other people. So from basically the timestamp is 51:46 to 52:55. And even if you don't watch this film, and just watch it for this moment, because I just love it. So basically, the coach is trying to like psych everyone up and be like, yeah, come on guys, like after this game we get to fight the Eagles, and you should make sure that everyone comes in, because even though he's a good batter, he like throws like a girl, so haha, we can get, we'll be really good at this. And so then Kimberly comes in and she goes, I throw like a girl. And the coach was like, what? Goes, I throw like a girl because I am a girl. Hannah throws like a girl too. She's just good at it. Why is it a compliment every time you say I run like a boy, but an insult when you say I run like a girl? Can't I just be a good runner or a bad runner? And then DB goes, but you are a bad runner. And she goes, I know that. Everyone knows that. But it's not because I'm a girl. It's because I'm an uncoordinated dork like Mark and Jordan. And I love that because it's degendering athletic ability and like degendering what people are supposed to do based on some proposed ideology on like the difference between men and women. And then as well, after like Kimberly has her big blowout and the coach is like trying to recover himself, he's like, if anyone else has any qualms they want to bring up, and is like trying to recover from himself. And then Hannah was all like, why do I have to be one of the boys? Why can't I just be a part of the team? And another kid goes, you made fun of the Eagles coach for being a nurse, but my dad's a nurse and he saves lives. So like that was rude. And also too, you're just a baseball coach. Dude's dad saves lives as a nurse. Like, you insignificant little so-and-so. But, because he's a nurse, he's like a bigger wuss than you or whatever. So yes, I appreciated that finally this dad gets put in his place. But despite the fact that he gets put in his place, he still doesn't budge when it comes to Eddie and his love of cooking. Because the $1 Million Cook-Off is on the same day, same time as when this team fights the Eagles. because Little League against the Eagles is more important than scholarships to post-secondary education. Huh? But the dad thinks that scouts are going to be there and pick up Eddie, and he's going to join the MLB and make tons of money, and like post-secondary, screw it. But yes, so to the point where after Eddie quits, he's like, whatever, I'm going to be a baseball player, no. The home ec teacher actually comes to their house and basically pleads with the family to be like, Eddie has a gift, he has a spark, Bridget, technically is amazing, but like Eddie has love of cooking and I can see it. And then the dad's like, yeah, but like he's not gonna let his team down. I know what my son's gonna do because I know my son so well. Even though earlier in the film, he was going, no one tells me anything. I don't know who you are anymore. But in that moment, he knows exactly what his son is gonna do. But yeah, so the dad's still being a stick in the mud and thinking that he knows what's best for his son. Yeah, everyone's just being a jerk until halfway through the Eagles game, because Francisco has this like little portable TV and he puts on the cook-off because it's televised and Bobby Flay is the host. So of course DB's like, why do you have that garbage on? Like Eddie's here because this is his priority and he loves it and blah 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 blah. And it's not until halfway through, because everyone's like, why are you so mean to Eddie about his this? And he's like, because we need to beat the Eagles. And then everyone's like, yeah, but DB, like, why does that matter? And he's like, that's not what matters. It's because I love baseball, and that's why I'm here. And then Hannah's like, oh, you mean how Eddie loves to cook? And it's not until that moment where DB, it's like a bomb goes off in his brain, and he's like, oh my God, he loves cooking the way I love baseball. So therefore, it's totally okay now. And so I should tell him that he needs to go to the cook-off. And it took him way too long to figure that out. They tell him to go off to the cook-off. He runs off. His mom drives him there. The dad is still like, what do you mean my son is doing this thing and whatever. And then again, it's not until Hannah's mom is like, I love and support you regardless of whether you're a baseball player or a cheerleader, that Eddie's dad is like, oh, maybe I should go support my son. So he gets himself thrown out of the game, which that doesn't really make any sense to me. He basically like pisses off the umpire so that the umpire kicks him out of the game. But he's one of two coaches, so I don't know why he couldn't just leave. But I guess this was him like showing how much more he cared about his son than he cared about baseball, that he was willing to get kicked out of a game. But whatever. So he finally gets there, and Eddie's there cooking by himself. He already has an hour. They had like 2 hours to cook their dish. Eddie only showed up within the last hour, so he has less time than everyone else, and he doesn't have any help. And so then his dad rushes onto the stage and is like, so I guess, you love this cooking thing and maybe you should show me what it's all about. And like in the heat of competition, he finally understands. Sure, cool. At the end, so it's one of those like MasterChef sort of things. So they have like a certain number of ingredients. They have to get it on the plate at a certain amount of time. And there's this moment where they don't have lemon. So then the dad like hucks a lemon at him like baseball style. And of course, because Eddie's an amazing baseball player, he can catch the lemon like no problem. And then he whips out his personal zester and zests his lemon onto the dish so he's still within the competition. So again, it's the combining of the two loves together in one space, blah, 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 whatever. So in the end, he doesn't end up winning, but everyone shows that he has heart and it's amazing. And his whole team comes after they beat the Eagles because it turns out they didn't need Eddie either if they just believed in themselves. So they all come together and they're all like cheering because Eddie was amazing even though he didn't win. Bridget won, and then she's like, well, what the hell? Why isn't anybody celebrating me? And then Eddie's like, come on, you can come celebrate with us. It's like this super cheesy moment where they're all going to get Eddie dogs, which is like Eddie's signature thing. He like basically just dresses up baseball game hot dogs, but everyone's all excited about it. And so then Bridget has this moment where she's with her trophy and she's like, but what about me? I'm hungry too. So then Eddie goes over and is like, yeah, okay, annoying girl, you can come with us and celebrate. And then that's the end of the movie. And I would tell you if anything interesting happened in the credits, but the credits move so quickly in Disney Channel original movies that they're just so blurry. Like there's so much they clearly like don't remaster these ones like they have with some of the animated films. And so the credits are like super draggy and blurry. But I also feel like the reason why this happens is because these are movies made for TV. They have to fit within a specific time slot. So they need to just quickly get the credits out of the way so that they can truncate and condense the movie into like either an hour or an hour and a half time slot before they play the next program. Because they obviously are obligated to show everybody who was involved in the film. But they don't want to drag it out because like they don't want to have like a full-length film and then like truncate the credits. Which I don't know. I'm trying to think when they show films, like cinema films on TV, what they do about the credits, or if they do speed it up, or if they like I said, truncate it, or if you watch all of the credits and then they like just put a bunch of commercials in it or something. But anyway, so I think that's why the credits are so fast. But there doesn't seem to be like there was anything important in the credits anyway. And if there was, I couldn't tell because they were moving too quickly. So, IMDb portion of this. This one, like I mentioned before, was a bit of me taking information from IMDb and creating my own trivia bits with it, because I think there was only like 2 bits of information for this film, which is a shame, but I tried to fill it in as best I could. So, actual information. Bobby Flay, so he said in a previous show that chocolate chicken was his favorite food, and that's actually what Eddie makes in the cook-off, is chocolate chicken. Because at one point, everyone's like, why is he putting chocolate and chicken together? And then the home ec teacher's like, he's making a mole, I'm so proud of him. So, my little bits of information here. It was directed by Paul Hohen. He also directed 8 of the other Disney Channel original movies that we're going to be watching. He's directed other Disney Channel original movies as well, more than 8 of them. But 8 within the context of our criteria were directed by him. So that's cool. So I think we're going to have a lot of consistency in terms of directors with some of the films. It'll be interesting to see in other movie genres outside of like Disney Channel original movies if there's multiple director crossovers, but there will be in this one. So like I said, the movie was filmed in New Zealand, so that explains Bridget's accent. There are other characters in the film who are also from New Zealand, but they have very minimal roles, and I feel like you don't actually hear their accent come out. You only really do with hers, maybe because she has the most talking lines. So Bridget Simons, the character of Marcus and Jordan, the actors' names are Kylie Linden, Jason Sellers, and Matthew Sellers. This is literally their only acting role, which I think is pretty amazing. For Kylie to get a co-starring role in a feature film and just be like, mic drop, that's all I'm doing. And maybe it's because she wasn't like the best teenage actress out there, but I think for, you to have a solid acting credit and then fade into obscurity is pretty baller. And then the other 2 as well, their only acting role. And really, of all of the kids, like the main kids in the cast, it's really only Riley McClendon and Rose MacGyver, who play DB and Hannah respectively, that are still actively acting in TV and film. Francisco is played by Orlando Brown, who's most well known for being in the That's So Raven series. And since That's So Raven wrapped, he really hasn't been in anything else. Sort of like what I mentioned previously when talking about The Rookie. He is one of the child stars who I think has, at least it's been reported, he's been struggling with a lot of issues like substance abuse and domestic violence. So he's another one of the child stars whose legacy or time in the spotlight has then shifted on a bit more of a darker path. He's still around, so hopefully he's making progress and is working his way to healing himself. But yeah, so he's one of the big name in terms of child actors who is attached to this film. He's actually in the poster on IMDb, so the movie poster for Eddie's Cook-Off, he's actually in it, even though he has less of a sort of active role than DB does in the film. But yeah, so basically DB and Hannah are really the only 2 child actors that are still actively in TV and film. Rose MacGyver more famously is in iZombie. That's the one that I recognize her the most from. Riley McClendon, I think he's done more like TV show bits here and there, not ones that I'm like personally familiar with, but if you go through IMDb, like he's still actively working. So I think that about wraps it up for our baseball episode of the podcast. In conclusion, I would say that definitely watch The Rookie if you're interested in just like a feel-good, inspirational film. Even if you have no interest in baseball, I literally have no interest in baseball. I actually, random side note, went to, I think they were called the Alberta Trappers. Went to a baseball game when I was little with my cousins, and I just thought it was the most boring thing in the world because all they did was just stand there with the bat. And I was like, isn't the whole point of baseball to hit the ball and like run around? And they were like strategically not hitting it and I guess trying to get balls. So I was like, this is the most boring thing in the world. But in watching these films, at least, I got a little bit more of an appreciation for baseball. I still don't think I have any desire to watch it itself, but the like hand signals, and there's a lot more like strategy and thought in, and like more kind of chess-based knowledge thinking, like thinking different steps ahead and different ways to do different things. Anyway, deeper appreciation for it, zero desire to watch it. But since watching these films, I've gained a little bit of perspective. So maybe you like baseball, maybe you don't care about baseball, but if you watch these, they might give you some perspective as well. Like I said, definitely for just the inspirational factor, for hunky Dennis Quaid, definitely watch The Rookie. For cute Angus T. Jones, again, great film. The Rookie of the Year, I just like Mary. I just like Henry's mom. So even if you just don't watch the film, maybe I'll find a timestamp of when she punches out her smarmy boyfriend, and I would just watch that bit. Honestly, like that's the best bit of the film. And then Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. I have a special spot in my heart for all Disney Channel original movies. But if I'm totally honest, there are better ones out there. Like this is not the cream of the DCOM crop, if you will. But it's cute. I don't know, if you just want something chill and easy to watch, I would watch it again because that's just me. But honestly, you're not missing much if you avoid this one. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's podcast. Again, like I said, we're still trying to work out some audio issues, things like that. But again, if you have any suggestions, please let me know. And I will see you guys next week. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.